Hi, Richard Rogers ydy enw fi. Croeso yma I Bodrida, fferm arddangos cyswllt ffermio, Farming Connect. Da ni yma heddiw efo John Bailey yn edrych ar Rotational Grazing a sut I wneud gwell defnydd o borfa. Da ni ffarmio rhyw 80 o uchadmagu a rhyw 1700 o ddefaid croes. Ydyn mae'r cyfle I ni wneud improfio efficiency'r ffarm yn bwysig iawn. I ni trio cynyddu'n margins.
My name is John Bailey. I have a little company in France. In French we call it Pasture Sense, and that means pasture sense. And the idea of that name is it's like common sense or a good sense. I gave a brief earlier on of basically my approach, which is always the same regardless of whether we're in mountains or in lowlands, wet or dry, beef, sheep or dairy. A couple of principles, then there's a kind of a basic method which is the same for everybody, and then there's that kind of leads to a specific tool, a grazing tool, and then there's a bit of some hints and tips on what the best way to get the best performance out of that. So the principles are to harvest the grass in the right zone of palatability and quality, which is quite low down, between basically, we'll say between 4 and 12 or 13 centimeters high. That's the high palatability, high quality zone. Eat only that, move quickly, 24, 48, 72 hour shifts with quite large mobs on rotations that you can vary depending on the amount of the speed of grass growth, and that you can actually work out on. So that's the first principle. The second principle is to always be farming to produce good roots in plants, because it's the roots that'll make you more money than you think. And get roots that go down far. They're taking the humus down, they're building very strong resistant plants that are very healthy as well for the animals, really nice balanced minerals. And these plants resist, when the growth slows, they take an awful long time to slow down, and they kick back in as soon as growth is starting to move back in, whereas plants with shallow rooting have all of the wrong problems. Their palatability zone is very shallow. They want to head out because the plant's instinct is to go to its reproductive cycle if the plant feels panicked. Just a small hint, something that sometimes gets me a little bit disappointed is to see people with quite high expenditure into things which I don't think are very sustainable, because they don't have a good grazing management system. And so I tend to try to encourage people to get the grazing management right first, and then if they want to enhance things with cost expenditure or other, do it once they have the grazing management right in the first place. The method I think is universal now. Means that you want to know the exact requirements of a mob of animals. It doesn't matter what the mob of animals is. We have tables now where we know exactly what their requirements are per day. The second is to have a grass curve, a pasture curve. You have to build a pasture curve to just to be able to see clearly what your strategy options are, and it will help you over time. You may use it very little at the beginning, but over years it'll become quite precious to you. It'll give you indications. That allows us to understand, and once we have the quality of the soil, that allows us to understand the potential. And we need to understand the potential, how much animal production per hectare we can be looking at in a certain farm situation. In other words, whether we're talking about solid milk solids, or whether we're talking about carcass per hectare, kilos carcass per hectare, or kilos of live weight gain, doesn't matter. We then know the potential, so that we can look at the options of subdividing and building subdivisions into it, so that we can have a very high level of control over the circumstances, and we can speed up and slow down, accelerate and decelerate the rotations as the grass is growing faster or slower through the season. So you have a tool that you're able to calibrate. It's quite easy to understand. I go through that process with the farmer, so that he feels as comfortable with it as I do, or I feel as comfortable as he does, the both of us. And then the last stage is to look at the person now has the tool, some hints and tips on the way to get that tool to give them the most returns possible, to just some hints and tips on strategy, when you should be slowing up and building covers, when you should be speeding up to convert the most into animal production, just things which will help him get over the first couple of mysteries. And a little bit of information on fences. I've realized that people are not all that accustomed to some quite good fencing systems. There's one fencing system which sticks out quite a long way, which comes from a company called Kiwitech in New Zealand, and was developed for what they call techno-grazing. It's small 1.6 to 1.8 millimeter high tensile wire on fiberglass posts with clips or glass couple nylon insulators on it, and it's basically a spring fence. You can drive across it, push it to the ground, and as long as the end posts don't move, and you don't need huge end posts, it's a very, very light structure fence. It'll keep its integrity, as they say, for 15, 20, 30 years. No problems. Very, very quick to put up. Very cheap, very effective. Whole techno systems running thousands, and a couple of them running tens of thousands of bulls for years and years and years, are all done up with techno, with spider fencing. Real easy stuff to put up. So it takes the pain out of fencing a bit.